The wrench slipped from my greasy fingers when Kina walked into my shop at midnight, her heels clicking against the concrete like a countdown timer. I'd been elbow deep in a 1967 Mustang's engine bay, trying to forget that my wife had been acting stranger than usual for the past month. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across her perfectly composed face. "I need you to pretend we broke up," she said, sliding her spare phone across my workbench like she was dealing cards. "My ex is coming to town, and I want to see if there's still something between us." I stared at the phone, then at her. Kina stood there in her designer coat, looking like she'd just stepped out of a board meeting instead of our shared apartment. Her blonde hair was pulled back in that severe bun she wore when she meant business. The same look she'd given me when she'd convinced me to move to this overpriced city 3 years ago for her PR job. "Just for the weekend," she continued, her voice steady as a metronome. "Don't text me. Don't call. Let me figure this out." The shop felt smaller suddenly, the walls pressing in like they were trying to squeeze the truth out of both of us. I wiped my hands on a rag and picked up the phone. It was warm from her pocket. "Okay," I said. That's when I started the audit. I walked past her toward the apartment we'd shared for 2 years, my boots echoing in the empty hallway of our building. Mrs. Puck's door cracked open as I passed. The old woman had made neighborhood surveillance her full-time hobby since retirement. I nodded at her and kept walking. Our apartment felt different when I opened the door. Kana had already been busy. Her suitcase sat open on our bed, half packed with clothes I'd never seen her wear. Lingerie that definitely wasn't for my benefit. The lease folder sat on the kitchen counter where I'd left it that morning, but now it was turned to a different page. She didn't know the lease was in my name. She also didn't know I'd been paying attention to every detail she'd been skipping for months. I grabbed the folder and my laptop, then started packing my own bag. Not much. Just enough for a few days at Samir's place above his bar. As I folded my clothes, I thought about how we'd gotten here. 3 years of following Kina's career from city to city, watching her climb the corporate ladder while I rebuilt classic cars in whatever garage space I could rent. She'd promised we were building something together. Turns out, she'd been building an exit strategy. The email notification chimed on my phone as I zipped up my duffel bag. Hotel reservation confirmation. Jasper Quaid had just checked into the Meridian downtown, using the credit card I'd stupidly added him to as an authorized user during our last friendly dinner 6 months ago. The receipt showed 2 guests. I forwarded the email to our building manager, Mr. Feld, with a simple note. Unauthorized use of joint credit account. Please document for insurance purposes. Then I changed every password I could think of and redirected the utilities to my shop address. Kina wanted a breakup? I'd give her the paperwork to prove it. The next morning, I was drinking coffee at Samir's bar when my phone rang. Kina's number flashed on the screen, but I let it go to voicemail. Then I listened to her message. Sweet, apologetic, ready to work things out now that she'd gained some clarity. I called her back. "We're not pretending anymore," I said, and hung up. The real work was just beginning. Samir poured me another coffee and leaned against the bar. His place opened at 11, but he'd been letting me crash in the back room since I'd shown up with my story. The anchor wasn't much to look at. Scarred wooden tables, neon beer signs, and the smell of decades' worth of cigarettes baked into the walls. But it was honest, unlike my marriage. "So, what's the plan?" Samir asked. He'd been a boxer before he bought this place, and his hands still looked like they could solve problems the direct way. "You gonna let her walk all over you?" "Not exactly." I pulled out my laptop and showed him the credit card statement. Jasper's been busy. 3 dinners at Romano's, 2 at the Meridian Bar, and a weekend at that boutique hotel in the hills. All on my card. That's theft. That's evidence. I scrolled through the charges, taking screenshots. Kina authorized him 6 months ago when we all had dinner together. Said it would be easier for business expenses when they worked on projects together. Samir snorted. "What kind of projects?" "The kind that happen in hotel rooms, apparently." I'd spent the morning doing research. Jasper Quaid, tech entrepreneur, recently divorced, worth about $3 million on paper. His company specialized in app development for corporate clients, including Kina's firm. They'd been collaborating on a project for the past 8 months, according to her calendar that she'd never bothered to password protect. My phone buzzed. Text from Kina. Can we talk? I made a mistake. I showed Samir the message. Too late for that conversation. Instead of responding to Kina, I called our building manager. Mr. Feld had been running the Meridian Apartments for 15 years, and he'd seen every kind of tenant drama imaginable. He also had a strict policy about lease violations. Rhett, I got your email about the credit card thing, he said when he picked up. You want to file a complaint? I want to document everything, for the record. Smart. You know, I've been meaning to talk to you about some noise complaints. Your wife's been having visitors at unusual hours. Mrs. Puck called 3 times this week. Mrs. Puck, the building's unofficial surveillance system. What kind of visitors? Male visitor, stays overnight, leaves early morning. She said she didn't recognize him, but he's been using your parking space. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Not anger exactly, but something sharper, more focused. How long has this been going on? Month, maybe 6 weeks. I didn't want to get involved in domestic issues, but if there's a lease violation, there might be. Can you send me copies of any documentation? Photos, complaint forms, whatever you've got? I'll email them over. After I hung up, Samir was watching me with an expression I recognized from his boxing days. The look he got right before he knocked someone out. You're planning something, he said. I'm planning everything. The emails from Feld arrived an hour later. Mrs. Puck had been thorough. Photos of Jasper's Tesla in my parking spot. Timestamps, even a description of him leaving with Kina's spare key. The old woman had missed her calling as a private investigator. I forwarded everything to my personal email account, then started building a timeline. The hotel charges, the parking violations, the noise complaints. It all painted a picture of a relationship that had been going on for months, while I'd been working 60-hour weeks in my shop, trying to save money for the house Kina said she wanted. My phone rang. Kina again. This time I answered. What? Don't be like this, Rhett. Come home so we can talk. I am home. You're the one who wanted space to figure things out. I figured it out. I want to be with you. Funny thing about that. I pulled up the hotel receipts on my screen. Jasper's been very generous with my credit card. $3,000 in charges over the past month. I'm thinking about sending him a thank you note. Silence on the other end, then. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. And now, I have receipts. Rhett, please. I hung up and turned off the phone. Samir was cleaning glasses behind the bar, but I could tell he was listening. She's going to try to spin this, I said. Make it my fault somehow. Say I was neglecting her, working too much, not paying attention. Were you? Probably. But that doesn't excuse this. I gestured at the laptop screen full of evidence. She could have talked to me, could have said she was unhappy. Instead, she decided to audition her replacement. So what's next? I closed the laptop and looked around Samir's bar. It wasn't much, but it was his. He'd built it from nothing after his boxing career ended, and nobody could take it away from him. I wanted that feeling back, the security of owning something that couldn't be stolen or sabotaged or tested by someone else. Next, I make sure she understands what she's losing. Monday morning, I drove to my shop instead of the apartment. The Meridian Automotive Restoration occupied a corner lot in the industrial district, wedged between a tire shop and a place that fixed appliances. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. The lease was in my name, the tools were paid for, and I had 3 vintage cars in various stages of resurrection. The Mustang I'd been working on Friday night sat where I'd left it, hood open like a metal mouth waiting to be fed. I'd promised the owner I'd have it running by Wednesday. At least somebody's expectations I could meet. My phone had 17 missed calls from Kina and 12 text messages that progressed from apologetic to angry to desperate. I deleted them all without reading past the first few words. Instead, I called my bank. I need to close a joint checking account and open a new individual account, I told the representative. I'll need both account holders present for that, or the other account holder has been allowing unauthorized users to access joint credit cards. I have documentation of fraudulent charges. That changed the conversation quickly. 20 minutes later, I had a new account, and the joint account was frozen pending investigation. Keena's direct deposit from her PR firm would bounce on Friday unless she opened her own account. Next, I called the utility companies. Gas, electric, water, internet, everything transferred to my name at the shop address. The apartment services would be disconnected in 72 hours unless someone else took responsibility for them. By lunchtime, I'd systematically dismantled the infrastructure of our shared life. It felt like taking apart an engine, methodical, precise, irreversible. Samir brought me a sandwich around 2 o'clock. You look like you haven't eaten since yesterday. I've been busy. I showed him my checklist. Bank account, utilities, insurance, credit cards. She wanted to see what life was like without me. Now she gets the full experience. She's going to be furious. She's going to be homeless. My phone rang. This time it wasn't Keena. It was Mr. Feld. Rhett, I need to talk to you about the apartment situation. Your wife came by this morning asking about getting locks changed. Did you change them? Can't. Lease is in your name and she's not listed as a tenant. I told her she'd need your permission or a court order. I felt a smile creep across my face. What did she say to that? Let's just say she wasn't happy. But there's something else. She had that fellow with her, the one from the photos. He was asking about taking over the lease. Jasper was there? That's the name she used. Tall guy, expensive clothes, drives the Tesla. He wanted to know about credit requirements and move-in procedures. What did you tell him? Same thing I told her. The current tenant has to break the lease first, and there's a penalty for early termination. Plus, we'd need to run a full credit and background check on any new applicant. How much is the penalty? 3 months' rent, plus forfeiture of the security deposit. I did the math in my head. Our apartment rented for $2,800 a month. The penalty would be over $8,000, plus the $2,000 deposit we'd put down. $10,000 for Keena to officially move on with her new life. Mr. Feld, I want to exercise my right to terminate the lease early. You sure about that? It's a lot of money. I'm sure. But I want to do it properly. Full documentation, everything by the book. I'll draw up the paperwork. When do you want the termination to take effect? End of the month. That gives them 2 weeks to figure out alternative arrangements. After I hung up, Samir was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. You're really going to pay 10 grand just to kick her out? I'm going to pay 10 grand to make a point. She wants to play house with Jasper? They can do it somewhere else, on their own dime. That's cold, man. That's business. I spent the rest of the afternoon working on the Mustang, letting my hands stay busy while my mind processed everything that had happened. 3 days ago, I'd been married to a woman I thought I knew. Now I was single, temporarily homeless, and apparently capable of strategic thinking I didn't know I possessed. The engine turned over on the third try, rumbling to life with a sound like controlled thunder. I revved it a few times, listening to the rhythm, making sure everything was running smooth. Sometimes the old machines just needed someone who understood how they worked. My phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. We need to talk. Jay. Jasper had gotten my number somehow. Probably from Keena's phone. I typed back, "No, we don't." The response came immediately. "This doesn't have to get ugly." I laughed out loud in the empty shop. "Already ugly," I typed. "You made sure of that." I'm trying to be reasonable here. Reasonable would have been keeping your hands off my wife and your charges off my credit card. A longer pause this time, then, "Meet me tomorrow. One conversation, then we can all move forward." I thought about it. Part of me was curious to see what Jasper thought he could offer me. Part of me wanted to tell him exactly what I thought of his version of reasonable. But mostly, I wanted to see how far he was willing to go to clean up the mess he'd helped create. Romano's, 7 p.m. You're buying. Fine. I put the phone away and went back to work on the Mustang. Tomorrow, I'd find out what Jasper Quaid thought this situation was worth to him. Tonight, I had an engine to finish rebuilding. Romano's buzzed with the usual Monday night crowd, couples sharing wine, business dinners wrapping up, the kind of people who could afford $30 entrees without checking their bank balance first. I arrived 10 minutes early and chose a corner table where I could watch the entrance. Old habits from my military days, before I'd met Keena, and convinced myself that civilian life meant letting my guard down. Jasper walked in at exactly 7 o'clock, scanning the room until he spotted me. He looked like Central Casting's idea of a successful tech entrepreneur. Tailored jacket, designer jeans, the kind of confident stride that came from never being told no. Up close, he was younger than I'd expected, maybe 35, with the soft edges of someone who'd never done physical work. He slid into the seat across from me without offering to shake hands. Smart move. Thanks for coming, he said, signaling the waitress. Thanks for paying, I replied. Least you can do after running up my credit card. His jaw tightened, but he kept his voice level. That was a misunderstanding. I thought Kina had cleared those expenses with you. $3,000 in hotels and dinners? What exactly did you think we were paying for? The waitress appeared before he could answer. Jasper ordered wine. I stuck with coffee. I wanted to stay sharp for whatever pitch he was about to make. Look, he said after she left, I know this situation is complicated, but Kina and I have history. We dated for 2 years before she met you. Ancient history. She married me. People change. Relationships evolve. He leaned forward, trying to establish some kind of connection. I'm not trying to hurt anyone here. I just want what's best for everyone involved. What's best for everyone would have been you staying out of my marriage. Your marriage was already in trouble. Kina told me she'd been unhappy for months. I felt that cold focus settling in again, the same feeling I'd had when I started dismantling our joint accounts. And you decided to help her work through those feelings? We reconnected at a conference in Seattle. It wasn't planned. But you planned everything that came after. The hotel visits, the late-night parking in my spot, using my credit card to finance your reunion tour. The wine arrived. Jasper took a long sip before responding. I'm prepared to reimburse you for those charges. How generous. I'm also prepared to make this transition easier for everyone, financially speaking. There it was, the offer I'd been waiting for. How much? $20,000. Cash. You sign the lease termination papers, walk away clean, and we all move on with our lives. I sipped my coffee and studied his face. $20,000 was more than I'd expected, but less than what this was really going to cost him. That's your opening bid? That's my only offer. Then we have a problem. I pulled out my phone and opened the photo gallery. Because I've been doing some math. I showed him the screenshots I'd taken of the credit card charges, the hotel receipts, the parking violations. 3 months of documented adultery, plus credit card fraud, since Kina authorized you without my knowledge of the relationship, plus violation of our lease agreement, since you've been staying overnight without being listed as a resident. His confident expression started to crack around the edges. What are you getting at? I'm getting at the fact that your girlfriend is about to lose her job when her boss finds out she's been conducting personal business on company time with company resources. And you're about to lose your business reputation when word gets around about how you operate. You can't prove any of that. I scrolled to the next photo, a screenshot of Kina's work calendar showing 8 months of client meetings with Jasper, most of them scheduled during regular business hours. Her assistant was very helpful when I called this morning. Apparently, Kina's been billing your dinner dates as legitimate business expenses. Jasper's face went pale. You called her office? I called to verify some charges on our joint credit card. Turns out her company has very strict policies about personal relationships with clients. Something about maintaining professional boundaries and avoiding conflicts of interest. You're bluffing. Am I? I put the phone away and leaned back in my chair. Here's what's going to happen, Jasper. You're going to pay for dinner tonight, and then you're going to disappear from my life. Kina can make her own choices about what she wants to do, but she's going to do it without my financial support and without my apartment. She loves me. Then you won't mind supporting her while she looks for a new job. He was quiet for a long moment, processing the implications. Finally, what do you want? I want you to understand that actions have consequences. You wanted to play house with my wife? Congratulations. Now you get to pay for the privilege. The $20,000? Keep it. You're going to need it for first month's rent somewhere else. I stood up and dropped a $10 bill on the table for my coffee. Thanks for the conversation. Next time you want to steal someone's life, maybe check the price tag first. I was halfway to the door when he called after me. This isn't over, Rhett. I turned around. The restaurant had gone quiet, other diners sensing drama. Yes, it is. You just don't know it yet. Outside, the October air was sharp and clean. I sat in my truck for a few minutes, letting my pulse settle back to normal. Phase 1 was complete. I'd established the rules of engagement and made sure Jasper understood he was playing a game he couldn't win. Now came the hard part, waiting to see how far they'd go to try to prove me wrong. Tuesday morning brought 3 missed calls from Keena's boss and a registered letter from a law firm I'd never heard of. I opened the letter in my shop while coffee brewed in the corner pot that had been my only luxury purchase in months. Cease and desist, in bold letters across the top. Apparently, I was interfering with business relationships and making false accusations that could damage professional reputations. The letter demanded I stop harassing Jasper and Keena's workplace, threaten legal action, and was signed by someone named Patricia Vance, attorney at law. I called the number on the letterhead. Vance and Associates, a receptionist answered. This is Rhett Vossen. I received a letter from Ms. Vance regarding some alleged harassment. Hold, please. 2 minutes later. Mr. Vossen, this is Patricia Vance. I trust you received our correspondence. I did. Very impressive. Must have cost my wife a lot of money to have it drafted so quickly. A pause. My client is concerned about your recent behavior. Your client should be concerned about credit card fraud and adultery, but apparently her priorities are different than mine. Mr. Vossen, I strongly advise you to consider the legal ramifications of your actions. Defamation, harassment, interference with business relationships, these are serious allegations. So is theft, so is fraud, so is violating the terms of a lease agreement. I pulled up my own documentation on the laptop. Ms. Vance, did your client mention that she's been conducting a personal relationship with a business associate for 8 months while billing their dinner dates as legitimate business expenses? Another pause, longer this time. I'm not sure what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. Facts I've documented with receipts, photographs, and witness statements. Facts that her employer might find very interesting. Are you threatening to... I'm not threatening anything. I'm explaining why your cease and desist letter is going directly into my trash can. I hung up and deleted the voicemail from Keena's boss without listening to it. If Margaret Harden wanted to have a conversation about her employees' business practices, she could schedule it through proper channels. My phone rang immediately. Keena's number. You called my office, she said without preamble. You called my boss. I verified some charges on our joint credit card. Standard procedure when investigating potential fraud. You're trying to get me fired. I'm trying to get my money back. If that affects your employment, maybe you should have thought about that before you started mixing business with pleasure. Rhett, please, can we just talk about this like adults? Adults don't stage fake breakups to test drive their next relationship. Adults don't commit credit card fraud. Adults don't lie for 8 months and then act surprised when there are consequences. I never meant for it to happen this way. But it did happen. And now we're dealing with the aftermath. What do you want? Money. I can pay you back for the credit card charges. I want you to understand that choices have consequences. You chose Jasper. You chose to lie to me, to your boss, to everyone around you. Now you get to live with those choices. And if I choose you instead, if I end things with Jasper and we try to work this out? I looked around my shop. The tools I'd bought with my own money, the cars I was rebuilding with my own hands, the business I'd built without anyone's help. 3 days ago, I would have said yes immediately. Now the idea felt like putting a bandage on a broken engine. Too late for that conversation, Keena? It's not too late. We can fix this. No, we can't. You broke something that can't be repaired. I hung up and turned off the phone. Outside, rain was starting to fall, the kind of steady Pacific Northwest drizzle that could last for days. I had work to do, and thinking about Keena's regrets wasn't going to get the Mustang finished. But first, I had one more call to make. Mr. Feld, it's Rhett Vossen. I want to accelerate the lease termination end of this week instead of end of the month. That'll increase the penalty. 4 months rent instead of 3. I understand. Can you have the paperwork ready by Thursday? Sure. But are you certain about this? That's a lot of money. I'm certain. And Mr. Feld, I want you to document everything. Every visitor, every noise complaint, every lease violation. I have a feeling I'm going to need that documentation soon. After I hung up, I sat in the quiet of my shop and listened to the rain on the metal roof. Somewhere across town, Keena was probably calling Jasper, telling him about our conversation, planning their next move. Let them plan. I'd been reacting to their choices for months without realizing it. Now it was time to start making choices of my own. Thursday afternoon, I signed the lease termination papers in Mr. Feld's office, while Keena paced in the lobby outside. Through the glass door, I could see her checking her phone every 30 seconds, probably texting updates to Jasper. She'd dressed for battle today, power suit, severe makeup, the armor she wore when she needed to intimidate someone. That's $11,200, Mr. Feld said, sliding the final document across his desk. Certified check, as requested. And the apartment? Vacated by Sunday at midnight, or we start charging daily penalties. All keys returned, all personal property removed. What about the security deposit? Forfeited as part of the early termination clause. But given the lease violations we've documented, that was already at risk. I signed the last page and handed over the check. 3 years of savings gone in one signature, but worth every penny for what it bought me. Complete separation from the life Keena had been planning to steal. She was waiting by the elevator when I came out of Feld's office. $11,000, Rhett? Really? My money, my choice. That was our down payment fund for the house we talked about buying. The house you talked about buying. I was just the bank account with legs. The elevator arrived and I stepped inside. Keena followed, hitting the button for our floor. Her floor now for 3 more days. I can't afford first month's rent and deposit on a new place by Sunday, she said as we rode up. Not without that money. Sounds like a problem you should discuss with Jasper. He seemed pretty confident about his finances when he was spending mine. He's having some cash flow issues with his business. I almost laughed. Cash flow issues? Is that what we're calling it? His investors are being difficult about the next funding round. Maybe they found out about his creative approach to expense management. The elevator opened on the 4th floor. Keena's key still worked, but not for much longer. I followed her into the apartment that had been our home, seeing it now like a crime scene. Everything looked the same, but I knew which wine glasses they'd used, which couch they'd sat on, which bed they'd shared while I was working late in my shop. I need more time, Keena said, turning to face me. Just a few weeks to figure things out. You had 8 months to figure things out. You chose to spend that time with someone else. I made a mistake. You made a series of choices. Now you get to live with the consequences. She sat down on the couch, our couch, bought with money from both of our accounts, back when we were still pretending to be partners. What if I told you I was sorry? What if I promised it would never happen again? I'd say you're sorry you got caught, not sorry you did it. That's not fair. Fair would have been you asking for a divorce before you started auditioning my replacement. My phone buzzed. Text message from Jasper. We should talk. This has gone far enough. I showed Keena the message. Your boyfriend wants to negotiate. He's trying to fix this. He's trying to fix the mess he helped create. There's a difference. I typed back. Nothing to discuss. You have 3 days to figure out alternative living arrangements. The response came immediately. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Already hard, I replied. You made sure of that. Keena was watching me text, her face cycling through emotions like a slot machine. He cares about me, Rhett. This isn't just some casual thing. Good. Then he won't mind supporting you while you look for work. What do you mean? I pulled up the email I'd received that morning from Margaret Harden's assistant. Your boss wants to see you first thing Monday morning. Something about reviewing your recent client relationships and expense reports. You didn't. I didn't have to. Turns out when you bill personal dinners as business expenses, The accounting department eventually notices, especially when the client starts paying with someone else's credit card. They can't fire me for that. They can fire you for violating company policy, misusing company resources, and creating potential liability issues with client relationships, which, according to your employee handbook, are all grounds for immediate termination. Keena's confident expression finally cracked. I've worked there for 3 years. I brought in over $2 million in new business last year, and you threw it all away for a guy who can't even pay his own hotel bills. This is vindictive, Rhett. This is cruel. This is consequences. You wanted to see what life looked like without me? Congratulations. You're about to get the full experience. I walked toward the door, then stopped. Oh, and Keena? You might want to start apartment hunting in a lower price range. Without your job and without my credit backing you up, your options are going to be limited. I hate you. No, you don't. You hate that you got caught. You hate that your plan didn't work. You hate that actions have consequences. I opened the door. But mostly, you hate that you're finally seeing what you're really worth without someone else paying the bills. I left her sitting on the couch in the apartment that would be empty by Sunday, probably calling Jasper to explain why their fairy tale romance was about to get a lot more expensive. 3 days later, I drove past the Meridian Apartments on my way to work. A moving truck sat in the parking lot, and I could see boxes stacked by the entrance. Keena and Jasper were loading furniture, both of them looking like they'd aged 5 years in the past week. I didn't stop to help. At my shop, the 1967 Mustang sat in the bay, fully restored and running like new. Its owner was picking it up this afternoon, and I already had 3 more jobs lined up. Business was good. Life was simple. And for the first time in months, everything in my world belonged to me. My phone buzzed one last time. Text from Keena. I hope you're happy. I deleted the message without responding. Happiness wasn't the point. The point was understanding the difference between what you earn and what you take, between what you build and what you steal, between what you choose and what chooses you. I'd learned that lesson the hard way. Now, it was their turn. The Mustang's engine hummed in perfect rhythm, every component working exactly as designed. Sometimes the old machines just needed someone who understood how they worked, someone willing to take them apart completely and rebuild them from the ground up. Sometimes people needed the same thing. But that was a lesson Keena and Jasper would have to learn on their own time, with their own money, in their own lives that no longer included me. I had work to do.